Well, hello everyone and welcome to my channel, and thank you for joining us as we go on a once-in-a-lifetime journey across Australia from Sydney to Perth on the famous Indian Pacific. Now, this wasn't the first time we tried to do this journey. We boarded the Indian Pacific in Perth back in March 2024, but unfortunately with 300 millimetres of rain on the Nullarbor that caused flash flooding, the line between Kalgoorlie and Cook was closed, and once the train was fully boarded they cancelled the trip.
Already standing, I'm already standing.
Having rebooked our journey for October 2024, our experience began after checking at Sydney Central Station with a complimentary buffet lunch, free drinks and live entertainment. Before too long, it was finally time to board the train.
I did explain that we're going on an epic adventure across the country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask one more time. Are you ready for your epic adventure across the country? Fabulous. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to announce that the Indian Pacific is now available for boarding. Thank you.
With that, it was time to head along platform 3 to our carriage, which was carriage F, to check out our private gold twin cabin. In our cabin we found lots of little goodies: lanyards, bottles of water, hand sanitizer, information about our upcoming tours and our meal card.
Teeny tiny. The shower cap and soap. And here we have the towels and the shower. We're not going to flick that now because we'll get wet. And then to keep the toilet paper in there and dry. To keep the bob roll dry.
To keep the bog dry.
Everything dry.
And then it was time for our slightly early departure from Central Station. Across the Blue Mountains in style, and now it was time for dinner, and a 3-course meal lay before us. You started off with the roast chicken galantine and the kangaroo loin, both of which were absolutely amazing. This was followed by an equally excellent Pacific Ocean swordfish and a deliciously tender beef eye fillet. And to finish off this wonderful meal, we had a banoffee tart and a cheese platter. While we were at dinner, the train staff have turned in our beds for the night, and it was time to return to our cabin. Reports of the track between Sydney and Broken Hill being rough are definitely not exaggerated. Overnight, our train will travel almost all the way to Broken Hill, where there were 5 off-train excursions scheduled. Unfortunately, overnight, a major storm went through Broken Hill, meaning that power to the entire outback city was out. Because of this, all but 2 of the excursions were cancelled, with the only one still running being the walking tour of the city and the trip out to the living desert. After spending a couple of hours in Australia's oldest mining town, we left Broken Hill on time and headed towards Peterborough and Adelaide. On the outskirts of the city, we could see a major storm brewing over to the south. We didn't realise it at the time, but this storm proved quite significant for our onward journey. After settling back onto the train, it was time for breakfast, and what a wonderful breakfast it was. The menu was amazing, and we both decided to go for the full breakfast. And then, before too long, we were approaching the railway town of Peterborough.
Peterborough was once a thriving rail town. From 1881, the route from Peterborough to Quinn was a narrow gauge line. However, it was rebuilt as a standard gauge line in 1970. At that time, it was South Australia's busiest regional railway hub, with no less than 102 trains passing through in a single day. These days, it's more of a quiet country town.
While it looks like a lot of what we did on the train was eat, that's not quite true, but coming up to Adelaide, it was time for lunch. We both decided to go for the Great Pickers lunch, followed by a chocolate and hazelnut tart and a raspberry and coconut ice cream. Amazing. Many off-train excursions were available in and around Adelaide, but we decided to go for a tour of the Adelaide Central Markets, followed by an exclusive dinner in the markets once it was closed to the public. An absolute highlight for us. A much smoother track meant a much better sleep as we travelled north of Adelaide overnight. But when we woke up, I realised we weren't quite as far along as what we should have been. But the scenery had definitely changed. We headed to the Queen Adelaide restaurant for breakfast, where we enjoyed a yogurt parfait and a smoked ham frittata.
Quite green.
It is, isn't it?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you would have noticed last night when we boarded the train, there was quite significant weather system passing across Adelaide and South Australia. This weather system, unfortunately, has caused us some issues with our running schedule. We had some signal failure last night, which caused a 3-hour delay where we sat stationary for some time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are anticipating arriving into Cook on our new anticipated arrival time is, just after 2 o'clock this afternoon.
It's okay, it was a journey across Australia without a hiccup along the way that just adds to the story. It was once again time for lunch, and we enjoyed a camel curry and a ploughman's plate, and that was followed by a salted caramel and macadamia ice cream and a baked apple and cinnamon tart. Yummy.
Oh, so that's nothing.
Yep, coming in here, trying to sell this stuff. So we're in Toronto Street, which is in the centre of Brisbane.
The time on train has just gone 1:50 p.m. I'd like to welcome you to the township of Cook. We've just arrived here on the outskirts of Cook, and whilst we're here today, the crew will be replenishing our water supply and our fuel supply, as well as changing drivers. The Nullarbor township of Cook was established in 1917 as a service centre for the Transcontinental Railway. Besides homes for its residents, Cook comprised of a school, a hospital, a general store, a recreation centre with an in-ground swimming pool, and even a golf course. In 1997, when the Australian National Railways was sold, it was decided that the town was only needed as a watering and refuelling station for passing trains, as well as accommodation for train drivers. Almost overnight, the hospital and school shut their doors and the people of Cook went their separate ways. Today, there are no longer any permanent residents living in Cook, and the town is used only to service the trains with diesel and water as they pass by each day. Although almost deserted, the town remains full of character, as I'm sure you'll see as you have a wander around later this afternoon. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the outside temperature in Cook today is 20 degrees. There is also no platform here in Cook, so stairs will be positioned for you to climb down from the train. Please do see any staff member if you require assistance.
Sometime after leaving Cook, our train slowly passed over the border between South Australia and Western Australia, entering the third state on this journey.
The forest is a vital link for the Defence Force and light aircraft travelling across the vastness of the Nullarbor, providing fuel, terminal facilities and accommodation. The Indian Pacific assists with the drop-off of groceries and mail to forest residents on its way through. For decades, fresh food and supplies were needed along the Nullarbor for railway workers, shearers and families that lived here. In 1918, a supply train was established that ran in both directions each week, known as the Tea and Sugar Train. The Tea and Sugar Train was heavily relied upon to supply flour, boiled beef, cabbage, rice, salt and pepper, and of course, tea and sugar. A butcher's van and a chemist were later added, and by the mid-1920s, the Tea and Sugar Train was a rolling shopping mall of just about everything you needed to survive that would conveniently stop in your backyard twice a week. Dependence on the tea and sugar for supplies became less and less, and after years of faithful service, the Tea and Sugar Train was taken out of service in 1996.
Our late arrival into Rawlinna meant that we enjoyed our delicious lamb dinner on the train rather than at the Outback Sheep Station. But an amazing journey beyond style, making the best out of the situation, they gave us such an amazing night in Rawlinna that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. That amazing night in Rawlinna is still in our minds. We all had a solid night's sleep as we travelled further into Western Australia. When we awoke, we were well past Kalgoorlie on our way to Perth. It was time for our last breakfast on the Indian Pacific, and the menu looked amazing. We enjoyed a chai bircher muesli, and what was our hands-down favourite breakfast on the train, the croque madame. As our train continued along to its destination, we couldn't help but notice how the landscape had changed so much. Unlike the dry, barren Nullarbor, there was water, there were trees, followed by salt lakes and salt plains that extended for as far as the eye could see. With no off-train excursions booked for this last day of the journey, it was time for lunch already, and we enjoyed a Fremantle mulloway and a roasted cauliflower salad, and this was all finished off with a hot chocolate brownie with a blood orange gelati.
And a very good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. The time on train has just gone 2:15 p.m. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now passing through the Avon Valley. This picturesque valley was named after the Avon River, which flows through. You can see the river to the right-hand side of the train in direction of travel. The Avon Valley is part of the traditional lands of the Ballaradong Noongar people. The Ballaradong are a specific language group of the Noongar people who've occupied the area for thousands of years, living in harmony with the land. There are a number of significant sites along the Avon River, including caves, some of which are homes of mythological beings like the Waygirl, the river serpent. Ceremonial sites, rock art, painting and artefacts have all been found in this region.
Exactly like down in one.
Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. The Indian Pacific is now approaching the city of Perth. Perth is Australia's most remote capital city, closer to Singapore than it is Sydney. Now home to almost 2 million residents, Perth is also Australia's sunniest capital city, clocking up to 3,000 hours of sunshine per year. The city of Perth is home to the Wadjak Noongar people of the Noongar Nation. The Aboriginal peoples have lived in the southwest corner of Western Australia for at least 45,000 years. The Aboriginal name for Perth is Boorloo. Perth is a gateway to some spectacular Western Australian destinations, including the colourful port town of Fremantle, the dolphin-watching paradise of Monkey Mia to the north, the Margaret River wine region to the south, and just off the Perth coastline, Rottnest Island. Western Australians have always placed great value on the natural environment. As early as 1872, they established Australia's first public park, Kings Park. Kings Park is located on the banks of the Swan River, and at 400 hectares is the largest inner-city park in the world, even bigger than Central Park in New York. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Indian Pacific is approximately 10 minutes away from arriving into East Perth Rail Terminal, completing its transcontinental journey.
Thank you so much everyone for watching this video and joining us on this epic journey on the Indian Pacific all the way from Sydney to Perth.